Good evening. The Campbell River Board of Education would like to acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the traditional territory of the Lake people. And please note that there is a 10 to 30-second production delay between the live event that you're viewing and the meeting participants. The question and answer function is open online for questions on agenda items throughout the meeting. And of course, a final call for questions will be made after the last agenda item, and the questions will be addressed at the end of the meeting. So I welcome you to the February 6th Board of Education meeting for School District 72. And Chair Eddie is joining us online this evening, but was concerned about the time delay in broadcast, so has thrust me into service as chair this evening. It's always an honor to be at this board table. I want to begin with an acknowledgement to Chair Eddie and to so many in our district and our community who supported Literacy Week at the end of January. Student achievement, of course, is paramount to us all, and it's through literacy that we can often empower our students for the future and create opportunities that can open doors. It also made me reflect on how fortunate we are to be engaged in so many partnerships with service clubs, with businesses, with volunteers, with families. In the greater school community that we serve, it takes many hands to make life work, and many of us wear multiple hats. I would like to just briefly mention that our Campbell River Rotary Clubs had opportunities to read to 54 classes during Rotarians Read. And as a Rotarian myself, I had the distinct privilege of reading to 2 grade 6-7 classes at a Call Phoenix Middle School. It made me long for the days of my youth, which are far, far past. On another partnership note, I look so forward to the School District 72 Long Service Recognition Evening later in February, which celebrates all of our partners from whatever vantage point or union who have dedicated so many years of their careers in support of our students. I think this annual event is truly a hallmark of a caring and inclusive school district. Now to open our meeting, our comments from Superintendent Mann.
Thank you, Acting Chair Gillens. I thought that was really great how you were recalling some things that have recently happened, and they didn't coincide with the things that I'm going to recall that recently happened. So I'd like to speak about 2 things that recently took place and 1 upcoming event as well. So I just wanted to acknowledge the official opening of the Pinecrest Playground, and I was able to be there last Friday as a part of that, or previous Friday, January 26th, as part of that. And I just wanted to acknowledge the 12 years of dedicated service by the PAC fundraising committee and also the community that helped move that forward. The playground was designed by staff and students, and the Ministry of Education provided $198,000 to help move that project forward. Just a real special thank you to the over 70 people who volunteered on very rainy, windy conditions to get that playground up and running. And although they are still awaiting their last structure, which is a huge climbing net that the kids are looking forward to, the playground is in active use, and it's fantastic for that school that they had it. I was happy to be part of that ceremonial opening. I also wanted to talk about an event that occurred all of last week, and that's kindergarten registration. We began our official kindergarten registration last Monday, and we also added a new wrinkle. We had it for the first time ever online registration for parents as an option. We currently have approximately 244 students who are registered on MyEd BC, and approximately 100 of those registered via online registration. So we do have a number of paper-based registrations that are waiting to be processed as well, and we will continue to generate kindergarten registrations in the weeks to come. But it was great to see the pilot went so well, and we're looking forward to having online registration in the future for all of our grades. So that was a fantastic start. The last thing I wanted to mention is, upcoming, Timberline is doing a theatrical performance of Guys and Dolls. Tickets are already on sale for that. The event happens on March 1st and 2nd. There is a matinee on March 3rd, and then also again on March 7th to 9th. So if you want tickets for that. I'm sure they will sell out, so you might want to purchase those as soon as possible. I'm looking forward to seeing that presentation. So some great things happening in and around the district recently, and lots of good things to look forward to.
Thank you, Superintendent Penny. So I'd now like to call for the approval, the minutes of the meeting of January 16th, 2024 are approved and circulated. So if we could have a mover, thank you, Trustee Harper, and seconded by Trustee Gladish. And all in favor? Great, thank you. And then are there any, is there any business arising from the minutes? Okay. Hearing none, I ask that the agenda is hereby approved as circulated and amended. Could I have a mover? Thank you, Trustee Briggs. And Trustee McMahon, you're making me look at both sides of the table. Thank you. Okay. And in favor? Thank you. And then approval of, oh, I'm sorry, we're on to the approval of the agenda. And we're now report of, oh, this is me. Yes. The report of board decisions from the February 6th confidential meeting, and we dealt with matters of personnel, property, and I'm forgetting one. Legal matters. Thank you very much. Yes. It was a long and interesting meeting. Thank you. Okay. And so if we could then move to correspondence, I don't believe there is any correspondence. Public submissions. Hearing none. Agenda submissions. Well, you're making this a very easy roll. Thank you. And now, a very exciting part of our evening is we actually get to hear from some very valued people within our school district. And I'm going to turn things over to Superintendent Kyle to introduce her fabulous team.
All right, thank you. Jennifer, is there any way to get rid of the top thing? No? Okay, we will work with it. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for having us present. I'm Morgan Kyle, Associate Superintendent. It is a deep pleasure to introduce Maya Saxby Jones, a counselor at Ecole Phoenix, Dylan Greer, a PE teacher at Ecole Phoenix, and Lana Thompson, who is a youth care worker at Southgate. We had, just before Christmas, a program called SafeTeen. It's been a renowned program, been going for a number of years, decades in fact, and it evolved from a woman that was with the Vancouver School Board, was doing self-defense for girls. So this was the early 90s, and realized that self-defense really wasn't solving the problem. It's how do we do the before so you're not in a situation of having to have self-defense. So it morphed into SafeTeen, and it's a skill-based violence prevention. It's really about, being in control of yourself. How do you diffuse situations? It's managing fear and anger, which are valid emotions that kids would feel, but how do you deal with that in a healthy way? The program, we brought it in. It's a very expensive program, but it's a really valuable program. 3 days. We got a grant from the Public Safety, Ministry of Public Safety. And so we used that grant to pay for the training. We had 14 of our own staff at Timberline, Robron, Phoenix, Kerry High, and Southgate. So 3 days that they've invested in it. Why SafeTeen? It's a direct connection to the strategic plan. It's supporting our social emotional learning and positive mental health. It's recognized by UBC as a best practice in social emotional learning. It meets PE sexual health curriculum, and it's responsive to what people are seeing in our schools. Kids needing better communication around anger. These are the topics covered, and I did it quickly because I really want you to hear from these three folks that did the training. But these are the topics that are covered in those 3 days of training. It's a level 1 training. So just have a quick read of those, and then I'm handing it over to Alana next. There we go. Over to you, Alana.
Okay, so I'm Alana Thompson, youth care worker at Southgate. And last year I was actually in 5 of our elementary schools, so it's lovely to be in one place. And so the 3 days were amazing for me, both on a professional level, but also on a personal. Speaking about an aha moment was on day 1 for me, where we talked about the gender roles and how there's this unwritten rule of how society treats male and female from the moment you're born. And so women are nice trained. So we're trained without saying anything. There's no handbook to not take up as much space, to be passive, to make room for the bigger voices in the room, and to just be nice. And so that's from the moment you're born, and then throughout school, it is to be kind, to be the nurturing ones, and not be outspoken. So that sort of leads into being assertive. And that's something that girls specifically are not always told that that's okay. So we live in our passive, and then a lot of our middle school girls are kind of living in their aggressive girl. But we want to teach and show that, you know, to keep yourself safe, to live your best wise self way, we want to live in that assertive self, wise self. So we talked in the program about these 3 characters. And we went into a lot of detail, which unfortunately I can't share in 3 minutes, but a big piece is validating feelings for our youth and explaining both in the male and the female that, you know, every feeling that you have is okay. It's a matter of what we do with those feelings. So I think we speak to that a little bit. So just giving that validation and finding outlets for them to use. In a nutshell, we covered a lot, but it was a really beautiful setup. And we talked a lot about worrying that we do split up the groups between male-bodied people and female-bodied people. And that was something that we brought forward right away because our confusion around that and for inclusion in schools. But the reason they do that is to create a safe place for specifically females or female-bodied people to share their own experiences in a safe circle without judgment, and a space where they can be their assertive self and take up that room that they deserve.
Yeah, thank you.
My name is Dylan Greer. I teach physical and health education at Phoenix. Every year I have the equal parts awkward, challenging, fun, important task of teaching sexual health and consent and all of these issues that students this age are just so fascinated by. And as I tell them every year, this is something that maybe unlike other subjects in our school, we will all have to deal with these issues. And if we make even one mistake, it could cost us our whole life. So these are incredibly important issues. What I really like about the SafeTeen program is that we talked about the code. So when we split up into these gender specific groups, male identified, female identified participants, as we do in schools, the code really touched on male gender socialization, and to borrow an expression from a colleague of mine, what seeds are we really watering in school? What are we reinforcing? What should we be reinforcing? What shouldn't we be reinforcing? And where are we offering validation for certain behaviors? And where should we be redirecting those at times, maybe. So I think that's really important, and these can be physical acts of physical or emotional, maybe dominance, where we don't actually want to reward those sorts of things. We talk a lot about the power bowl and how sometimes people, maybe in bullying situations or other social situations, are taking power from others from their power bowl to fill up their own power bowl. And that really resonated with me, something that I see very often in schools. We also talked about presenting masculinity as potentially being balanced or unbalanced, which I think is really helpful terminology in schools. And I think it's a way of recognizing that a lot of the people that we're teaching haven't had this model for them before and don't really know. So to label it as something more hard than that might not be the path forward. So I've really found a lot that that would be helpful for my teaching, and that I think we can really use in schools.
My name is Maya Saxon-Jones, and I'm a counselor at Phoenix Middle School, as I mentioned. Why I was interested in this learning, when Morgan invited us all to come, I took a look online before sort of signing up for it, just to look into it a little bit myself, and I was excited to see that it was run by mostly clinical counselors. And so I was excited to look at a preventative model for something that I was hearing a lot about in my counseling office. And I was hearing these stories from mostly female-bodied young people, but really everybody about violence, and I was wanting to sort of think about a way that we could be working preventatively. So it wasn't by the time they ended up in my office with me, it seemed like it was too late for some of these kids to leave. So this program was exciting. That's what drew me to it. And what I got out of it was an experiential workshop that we can be teaching and learning alongside our youth. I'm really looking forward to the next training that I hope we get to take. And really, this training looks at like our culture that Atlanta spoke to, tells us how to be according to our gender from a very young age, and the socialization and how that shows up in our community here. And so it kind of zoomed me out in this training to like start thinking about those implicit and explicit messages that were given. And it also brought me back down to earth, and how can we talk about this in a way that youth are going to understand, and that we can and a lot of this teaching and learning is done through role modeling, like actually at sort of doing lots of role plays. So that was a neat part of it as well. And so lots of metaphors in this program, and one of these metaphors, as Dylan touched on, is the power bowl. And this power bowl is essentially that like all of us have these bowls, and things that fill our bowls are the positive experiences that we have in our lives. So accomplishments, positive relationships, all of these things fill up our bowl. And then sometimes as life happens, our bowls can get cracked, and that they can be cracked from a variety of things that we can all probably think about. A lot of the time, capital T traumas, and then also like smaller T traumas. And our power can slowly slip out of these bowls through these cracks. And essentially what this training talks about is how to, what to do if your bowl does get cracked, how to heal so that your power, so you can feel empowered, and that your power isn't leaking out, so you have to steal from other people's power bowls in order to feel powerful yourself. So, and then also how your bowl is yours to take care of and heal. That's where the gold resin comes in, is finding those ways, healthy ways to heal. And that your bowl is yours to take care of, and other people's bowls are theirs to take care of. So even though you can see someone's bowl has a crack in it, it's not up to you to have to fix that crack. You're in charge of your bowl and your own healing. And so it really was an empowerment workshop that I think could be really, really helpful for the youth
in our community.
Thank you. So the sense I hope that you're getting is that it was really powerful, both individually, but also how it can help and support our kids, so that they're interacting with one another in really positive ways. So what's already happening in our district, and we're gonna go through this, because I want to spend a little bit more time on the other one, is we've got second step happening in elementary. And just in a sentence or two, Lana, can you
Yeah,
just do
so
a
the
quick?
Second Steps program, was bought for the entire, every school in school district 72 last year. So kindergarten to grade 5 was given this program. It's social and emotional. So it's about naming your feelings, being assertive. So it's planting the seeds that would sort of lead into this kind of beautiful training that we can do at the middle and high school age. And it was received really well by every elementary school. I personally, like I said, was in 5 of the schools, so I know at least half of the district got fully trained. So, and it's such an easy, you can pick it up as a teacher and take a lesson. There's 26 lessons in each book. And yeah, it's phenomenal. It's used all around Canada, probably in the States as well, but yeah.
Thank you. We've got our mental health framework that Drew Williams has been working on, and Brendan and Tracy Kennedy before that. Preventure is a newer program that is spreading itself throughout the district and already within our PE sexual health curriculum. So we've got lots of things going on, but in specific to the SafeTeen training, the next steps that we've got. And the reason that we shared what's already going on is making sure that this is all woven together, particularly around consent, which is a ministry sort of focus for us. And this is a way to possibly do that, but also weaving all of those other areas into this. So Elena, did you want to speak to, and we'll hand it to the next steps?
Yeah, so a big group of us actually met a second time that took the training. So the 14 of, I think 7 or 9 of us were able to meet again here. And we talked about what next steps would look like in rolling it out. So we all agreed that we want it to be universal all around school district 72. So whatever I'm doing at Southgate is going to be the exact same thing that's happening at Phoenix, same thing at Cherry High, same thing at Timberline. So all the messaging is the same. So wherever that student is attending, they're hearing the exact same thing. And then the teachers are hearing and using the same language. So that's our hope, to kind of brainstorm together what we want that to look like. And our hope is to roll it out as soon as September next year, so that we're getting the people that need to hear the messaging.
And there'll be level 2 training with people that were there to get even more deeply immersed in that program. And again, full implementation, but also looking to pilot it with folks that are already invested in this. What do we need to tweak? What's appropriate for which grade level? And Elena had also said, like, ideally, there would be a half-day Pro D at each of those schools, so that teachers and other staff in those schools can start to use the same kind of language. Are you using, your wise woman, your solid guy, so that language is universal, and kids are getting it in all different ways to redirect those feelings. So that was a really, really quick, but you guys did such a great job of encapsulating that in a really great way. So thank you. And if there's any questions, the 3 folks would be happy to.
That was our biggest struggle this year. When we got together to put this together, like, how do we say how amazing this was in 10 minutes? Like, how do we not miss the pieces that, like, we're still so excited about and still wanted to come together as a group to ensure that, we didn't do this fantastic training and then it kind of be left to the wayside. And so, like, it's not reinventing the wheel. It's the same idea, but it's just reminding people and shedding the light on it that it's still happening. So let's get this wave of generation trained and aware that they can be assertive and make choices and, heal themselves and say.
Are there any questions or comments? Yes, Joy.
I'm very excited by this, but it resonates with me because I work with the 0 to 5-year-olds. So, treating language where people can express their emotions, and how we hopefully get folks off to you who are already sort of in a predisposition to be able to take the learning that they might gain from you. But I'm thinking, is there any way that you might have considered how some of the, for instance, you said solid guy, some of that terminology that you use to express concepts that you want to reinforce might be passed down to the early learning community, so we can start using that language before they get to you?
Yeah, absolutely. And sorry to speak on Karen, but I have a 5-year-old daughter, and I was sharing today that I'm already using the language with her. So it's fine to use passive, aggressive, assertive. And so when I'm teaching her to ask me something and she's using her whiny voice, I'm like, oh, girl, we need to use our assertive voice. And she'll stand up, she'll own her space, and she'll say, Mom, can I have da 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 da, whatever she was asking for. So it's just repetition. So using those 3 characters and talking about it and explaining why we use our assertive self, you know, for asking her things, for owning your space, and for that validation piece. But speaking the kindergarten, second steps has some really beautiful lessons that you could use preschool age as
We've
well.
used it,
Yeah.
we've used it in preschool.
Yeah.
Staff. I was just thinking that as a school district, because our children are your children, you know, there might be, you know, just a few key pieces that you might pass to the larger early learning community, because it certainly is one that they're very focused on. You know, with many children coming to us who have been through COVID, that some of their kind of organic social emotional development was disrupted. So we're finding them arrive with us and needing some catch up.
Totally. And that's something we talked about in our big group as well, is we've been given these tools and we have the flexibility with this program. Instead of calling it SafeTeen, we can call it whatever we're gonna call it and implement it. And then once it's spread out throughout SD 72, that's when we can, you know, have our little handbook of our names, our characters, and introducing it at the younger stages for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Gladys, yeah.
Wow, so impressed. It reminds me of visiting my grandchildren, and my son opened the agenda book of my granddaughter who's in kindergarten, and it said, we discussed consent. And I thought, oh, I wonder how they did that. And my son just kind of, well, you know, 3 kids. So this is really impressive. I think it's just amazing. Now, is this, you said 26 lessons? Is that what you said?
That's the second step program. not the
Oh, okay. So is this sort of it sounds almost like a philosophy, or you've taken language and you're sort of embedding that in what you do in the classroom.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you just sort of carry it through middle school. And is it only middle school?
And high school.
And in high school,
Yeah,
okay.
so our hope or like vision of it is that we would take a classroom. And so say at Southgate, I'd love for all of the grade to get it and have that first layer before they get to high school. But it's full, like, and we would split up. So it'd be female bodied people
Yeah.
and male bodied people. So there'd be 2 facilitators. So if
Mhm.
Dylan and myself, he would take the males, I would take the females, and we would split up and go through the program. And then we talked about in the group how important it is to come together after and share some of the things that each of the learnings from both sides, because it's just as important for the male bodied people to hear the messaging that the female bodied and vice versa.
And then how do you think it's impacting the students? Like, do you see them taking away this kind of language and making it a part of how they communicate?
I think that's the goal, and I think reinforcing certain things. So speaking to sort of the male identified students, I think things like vulnerability, teaching them the power of expressing vulnerability is really important, and we're socialized not to very often. And we were speaking about emotional regulation and things like that, and teaching them that it's very appropriate and can actually be very useful to express your vulnerability. And we actually did an activity that we go around the circle and say, here's something I'm not good at. And we all kind of go, here's something I can't do. And then we go back around, here's something I'm great at. And that it's totally okay to express those things at the middle school level, I think is really great. So building that common language, vulnerability, being assertive, and I think at different checkpoints, we could actually flesh that out even more. And that's, yeah, the goal, I think.
I think just a little bit further, Jan, is the training that our folks are taking, they will not be considered SafeTeen facilitators. What SafeTeen has done generously is, yes, we're going to provide the training, you can call whatever you want, you can pull from it as much as you want and develop what that would look like. And so what we've talked about, and we've met and we'll continue to meet around what's appropriate at the different age groups, right? So what's appropriate for grade 6 versus, grade 11? Because when we're talking about consent, important for both, female identified, male identified to fully understand what that looks like, what it sounds like, the verbal communication, the nonverbal communication. So just empowering and those little nuggets that can be left that kids can pull back on when, not if, when they're confronted with those situations. So we're developing that. The facilitators will go around. So we won't be at this point planning to build capacity with individual teachers in classrooms. Facilitators who have been trained would go in. So again, that consistency that they all spoke about is the goal.
Well, we are so appreciative of the fact that you've taken time from your evening lives to be here to inform and demonstrate for us, I think, your passion. The recent professional development that we attended on January 8th, and one of the takeaways I took was pay attention to the things that you don't often pay attention to. Given us another level of awareness and the fact that you are modeling, I'm sure, the most powerful way to influence children and students and behavior is to be the models yourselves. And so by working as a team and working with others, I think you create that passion and that belief that we can shape and help and support people become who they'll be. So thank you to Maya, Dylan, and Alana. I know Alana because I married her, but anyway, to her husband. Years ago, she's got a 5-year-old now. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Okay.
Oh dear.
That's your favorite line.
And thank you, Associate Superintendent Kyle, for the wonderful framing. So to electorate and board matters, we're looking at board governance policy review, and just to inform everyone, we are Trustee McMahon and I, as your governance committee, are now currently well underway in terms of with our senior management's support, looking for someone that's going to provide us with a policy review. And in essence, what we will look to do is review the current policies that we have in place and see which of those might be up for consideration for some reviews, some polishing, perhaps some additions. So I don't believe we're ready to announce a person that we have, but we feel we have a very good lead on someone who's going to be a wonderful champion and support us in our efforts to review our policy guidebook. We're currently looking also at just some potential revisions to our code of conduct, and we will have further information for you as we get further along the way. Any questions, comments? Great. Okay, so educational issues. Over to Superintendent Manning, who's going to talk to us about cell phone usage in schools.
Thank you, Acting Chair Gillis. If you paid attention at all to the news over the last 3 or 4 months, you could not have helped noticing how much cell phones were in the news and how much the term cell phone bans in school districts and in schools is a very popular comment in media these days. The Ministry of Education 2 weeks ago came out with an announcement that covered 3 broad-reaching topics. One was restricting cell phone use in schools. One was launching services to remove images from the internet and pursue predators. And the third was legislation to hold social media companies accountable for any harm that they cause. Tonight, I want to mostly speak about cell phone usage because it really started as something that swept across the country. Big news in Ontario and made its way west with different districts declaring they were going to have a cell phone ban. And then finally the ministry decided they needed to take a stand, and they did a deep dive into what school districts in the province of British Columbia are doing. And out of the 60 school districts, approximately half of them have some type of reference to cell phones, whether it's in school codes of conduct or operational procedures. They've got something embedded. So what the ministry had decided to get everybody on the same page and come up with a standard for the start of the 2024-25 school year, that all districts must have a school cell phone procedure in place that talks about the use of cell phones in schools. And I think what the ultimate goal of the ministry is to diminish the distractions that students face in the classroom. The ministry is not calling it a ban. There are certainly times in our school district where we would use cell phones and technology to advance educational purposes. This is more speaking to the distracting nature of cell phones, the addictive nature of cell phones, and how some students are actually unable to focus in school or be in school without their cell phone right next to them. Right now in our school district, it's pretty broad-based in terms of what happens at each of our schools, and it's more of an individual teacher preference in terms of cell phone usage in their classroom. So we're going to be moving ahead this spring and summer and putting in place a procedure that all schools can adhere to, so that we can have some consistency across the school district, and hopefully, you know, get those times where we have few distractions in the classroom and students are really able to focus. I was fortunate enough to be part of a district student council session where we had a great discussion with the student council on cell phone use in schools. And they were very open about the fact that at some points, students are constantly on their phones, and other classes, students aren't on their phones at all. And I think they were looking to see some guidelines and say, what can we do to help all of us combat this, because they have become so addictive. I did want to point out that in terms of removing images from the internet, whenever our school district finds these images, we work with Safer Schools Together to get those images taken down as soon as possible. And in terms of the legislation to hold social media companies accountable, that's coming in the spring. So we can look forward to the ministry making some announcements at that point. But I just wanted to let the board know that we'll be doing our part, because currently right now, we do not have a cell phone policy or operational procedures or school codes of conduct that specifically speak to cell phone usage and what our guidelines are about it. So looking forward to getting that underway.
Thank you.
Does the board have any questions?
Does any questions? Okay, appreciate that. And I have to say, I appreciate the very positive way in which that framed, because we are trying to create focus. We are trying to minimize distraction to improve student achievement, student interest. So I think that's well stated. Thank you. Okay, moving on to business administration, and if we could call on Mr. Patrick for finance warrant number 6.
Looking for a motion to accept the December finance warrant.
And okay, that the finance warrant number 6 dated December 31st, 2023 be accepted as present. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Trustee Gladish. And seconder, Trustee Briggs. Okay. And any further discussion? Okay, those in favor? Thank you. Okay, and now our quarterly finance report, and I understand we have a real treat this evening.
We do have a
Terrific.
treat.
All right.
Really happy to be introducing Jillian Leask tonight. We were really lucky when she accepted the interim Assistant Secretary Treasurer's position. She learned quickly and has continued to do the great work that Renee was doing. Renee went on leave for a year. But not only has she continued the work, she's been implementing many improvements that are going to be felt well beyond her stay with us. Now, the Assistant Secretary Treasurer, Jillian, prepares all the stuff that I share with you, so it's appropriate. And I'm really excited that she's here tonight to present the financial reports that she has prepared. It's gonna be different, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing your presentation tonight. And her time with us will be coming to a close very soon, and I want to thank you. You've done a wonderful job. Again, the school district has had a tremendous benefit from you being here, and I want to thank you.
That's so kind, thank you. Oh, no pressure. Oh, yeah, thanks so much, Kevin. I appreciate it. My time here has been amazing, and I'm so appreciative of this opportunity. So thank you, Kevin, for taking a chance on me. And thank you so much for having me here today to speak. It's such a privilege to be here with you all, the trustees and our educators and everyone doing such amazing work to support our students and our community. And I'm just really happy to be part of that. So thanks for having me today and talk about numbers. Your favorite thing. So I'll be presenting our Q2 financial report today. This report is based on our operating fund, which I hope you're all aware is our largest, most significant fund. It covers our most significant revenues and expenses. You all should have a copy. It's of the exhibit, follow along with in your agenda package. So you can have that to refer to if you'd like as we go through. Before we get started, I just want to note that the budget figures that are presented in here are based on the preliminary budget. So that was set way back many months ago. So there will be some changes that you'll notice. And we're currently working on developing our final budget right now. So this report is great timing for me because it makes me go, oh, so I must update that. So moving on. All right, so just an overview of the report as a whole. Overall, our budget is in alignment with our expectations, so there's no significant variances to note currently. Everything is looking pretty good for the year. We do have a structural deficit continuing throughout the year. However, you'll note it's mainly just due to a misalignment of the timing of our revenues and expenses and how things actually come in versus how we allocate them to come in for budget reporting, which we'll see in more detail later. And as things go, if we continue spending the way that we are currently spending, we're expected that we're going to remain on budget for the year. So things are looking good. So starting off with the revenue section here, this is quite small, so I apologize for that, but you've got it in front of you. I just want to highlight our totals at the bottom. Our total actual revenue so far to date is $519,000 over budget. So we're seeing more revenues than we expected by 1.8%. And I just want to highlight a couple of sources of that positive variance, which can't really see very well on the screen. The first one being our operating grants that we received from the ministry. So our first main operating grant, we're seeing a little bit of extra over what we expected, basically just due to enrollment increasing more than we expected. And then that second one that's larger but less significant is a timing thing. We receive all the grants up front. We don't really recognize that in the budget based on a quarterly basis. Other revenue variances, our miscellaneous revenue is significantly over budget right now. So we're seeing $203,000 more miscellaneous revenue than we had budgeted for in the prelim. This is mainly due to grants that we've received throughout the year that we weren't expecting in the preliminary budget. So you'll actually see a corresponding increase in costs that are related to those grants because most of them are targeted towards staffing initiatives. So there's $162,000 of that is for FTE costs. So you'll see the costs increase on that side as well. And the remainder are a few smaller grants that are towards other targeted programs. So that's one of the things that will be updated in the final budget because now we know that they're there and what we're using them for. And then otherwise, our investment income is $170,000 over budget as well year to date. We did increase the budget for investment income last year. but wanted to be conservative. I'm sure everybody is aware that interest rates have been going through some interesting things. Hopefully it doesn't hit me too hard personally to hear that. For me, it does. But we will be increasing that for the final to reflect what we have now seen throughout the year. We are seeing the rates start to turn down a tiny bit for our investment income, but they have remained quite high throughout the year. So that's been really positive for us. And now turning it over to the expenses side, this is a general overall summary. I just want to highlight that our salaries, wages, and benefits year to date are $334,000 under budget. And our services, contracts, and supplies are $163,000 over budget, bringing us to a total of $170,000 under budget when it comes to operating expenses. We'll get into the details of what that means more. This is really small, but just a quick highlight of where that variance is really coming from, the most significant spot. So you'll see it better on your page and then we go into detail further, but basically our instruction function is $497,000 over budget as a whole. And our operations and maintenance budget is $750,000 underspent at this point in the year. So coupled with the less significant overages in our other functions, that's where that net 170,000 under budget is coming from. So here's our instruction overview here. You have a copy of this in your package as well. This just kind of lays it out in a nice visual. We've got the long purple line as our total budget for the year, and then our actuals in yellow versus our budget in purple, or sorry, red. So for instruction function, we can see that we're over budget in supplies and a little bit of benefits and in teacher wages as well, and under or close to budget on all the rest. So I just want to highlight a few of these, which you can see in detail in the report, but I wanted to bring the most significant items to your attention. So our teacher wages, we're sitting $257,000 over budget currently. This isn't a concern at this point. This is largely due to the timing of our summer school wages. So in our budget report, total teacher wages are budgeted at 40% of the year because we're 40% of the way through the year. But 100% of our summer school teacher wages have been expensed to date. So that's creating a bit of a variance there. Otherwise, we've got FTE increases throughout the year. So a chunk of that is related to that increase in miscellaneous revenue. So that would be offset there. And then we've had a small increase in staffing just due to enrollment increases as well. Our support staff under the instruction function are $272,000 under budget. That looks like a lot, but it's a very big budget. It's a similar figure to last year. Likely related to some vacancies in positions, and something that we expect at this point, in this time of the year. Our benefits and instruction are $112,000 over budget right now. I know there's been lots of concern about benefits previously, but I'm here to reassure you that our benefits are not in a bad place. We're actually budgeted quite well for benefits. One timing issue with this function is it's very big. It's our largest function, or 80% of our budget. It falls under this instruction function. So generally we say, okay, 40% of budget should be expended at this time because it's 40% of our instructional year. There's a lot of administrator wages and benefits that are included in this budget. So we're budgeting that at 40% because we're looking at it as a whole, but a lot of those have actually been expensed to 50% at this point in the year because we've got 12-month employees grouped in with this more significantly 10-month group. So that distorts the variance there a little bit, not a little bit, by about $96,000. So it's mainly to do with that. You'll see as the year moves on, that variance will get smaller and smaller. And then by the end of the year, it should flush itself out. We do also have a benefits holiday budgeted that we are currently in the process of taking. So we're going to see a $200,000 cost savings for benefits in this room right now. So we're not seeing that reflected in the budget, in the actuals at this point, but it is in the budget. So there's another reason for that variance there. So overall budgets, are actually looking pretty good. Our data processing, which is included in the supplies, we're at $188,000 over budget right now. Sounds really bad, but again, it's not a terrible thing. A lot of our expenses are prepaids, or we pay one lump sum for the full year. And it works better for us to report on that as a whole, like we've spent that money, so we know that budget is gone at the beginning of the year, rather than spreading that cost, allocating it over a number of months to kind of see the cost flow. Because it helps us see how much budget we have left for other things, but it also can look really scary when we're looking at how much should we have spent at this point in the year. So that's one of those items where it's just mostly because there's a large upfront cost. There are some items in here where we have seen some inflationary increases that were not included in the preliminary budget. So there is definitely some increase to cost when it comes to data processing that we'll be looking at when it comes to the final budget. And then finally, instructional supplies, we're at $253,000 over budget. Again, this is a lot related to those prepaid expenses that were expensed right at the beginning of the year, but are for things that last the whole year long. And this is also where a lot of our school supply budgets are held. And as you know, we appropriate those, they're carried forward every year. So schools have access to a lot more than what shows up in our preliminary budget, because it includes those prior year appropriations. So this is instruction. It's probably my busiest slide, so I'll just reassure you that the rest of them are not quite as complicated as this one. Whoop. So moving on to administration, same kind of track. You can see that we're looking over budget in supplies and professional staff, and then looking pretty good for the rest of our categories here. Professional staff overage, we're about $30,000 over year to date for that, mainly due to a conservative exempt wage increase estimate in our preliminary budget. We weren't sure about some funding at that point and did not have those wage increases finalized, so we went on the low side. And now we're seeing higher wages due to what was actually approved. So we will be amending that for the final, and we'll get rid of that variance there. And then otherwise, we've got supplies, which are $25,000 over. And again, this one is solely just due to the timing of the prepaids being recognized right upfront. Moving on to our maintenance function. We're pretty well under budget for almost everything in maintenance across the board. Seeing a little bit of an overage in our professional staff line, and that's due to some contract work in IT, which is, we're pulling budget from a vacancy actually within this support staff underage. So our support staff is quite under budget in our maintenance function. A lot of that is being charged back. So we take maintenance wages and then we're charging them out to other functions for the work that they have put, so that reduces our maintenance wages. We've also got lots of vacancies. This is another large pool of our staff. So when we have vacancies, we see a lot of underages related to that. The contract line also looking very, very under budget. This is mainly due to ministry cost recoveries that we're billed for every year. They haven't hit the books yet, so it looks like we're really underspent, but those are coming. Fuel is looking 94,000 under currently. Again, a timing thing. Most of our fuel costs occur in the winter months, so we're just starting to see those. So that will catch up, I'm sure, over time. Though maybe not so much this year since it hasn't been too harsh of a winter. And then our computer replacement, 135K under budget so far. That's just as timing of spend as we get the planned purchases rolling later on in the year. And moving to our final function, transportation. We're over budget in supplies and close on all the rest of our different categories here. So I'm just going to speak to the supplies. This is quite a small budget compared to our district proportionally. So our overage in supplies, 50,000, mainly fuel, bus repairs and maintenance costs. We're seeing a similar trend to last year at this time. So when we're working to allocate our final budget, solidify those allocations, we'll be looking to pull some budget from elsewhere to match our budget more closely to our spending, our actual spending. Comes to categorizing. And then our final page is just our trustee and executive expenses. Nothing significant to note on here. There's a comparison to prior year and it looks in line with expectations based on prior year. And that is your report. So you can always reach out to me if you have questions and I can answer any questions today.
Well, thank you. I feel, again, so informed. I do have one question. I always, and I'm sure Kevin is a very good teacher, but I've just never gotten the concept of benefits holidays. Have you got a name?
Yeah, I finally do, yes. So, it depends on, so we're constantly paying benefits. It depends on the type of benefits that we're talking about, but the ones that we're able to take benefits holiday from, we're paying money towards the benefits provider and it's kind of building up, like we're making deposits into this bank.
Okay.
And then they are paying the benefit services that are coming out, the actual usage of the benefits that are coming out of that bank. So the employee's actual expenses. So we have to keep an eye on the balance in that bank account because if we're paying a ton and the employees are not really using that much, then we're overpaying for our benefits. It's still ours because it's in that kind of bank, but we don't need to be paying that much because the usage, it doesn't match the usage. So periodically we'll look at the bank and we'll say, okay, how much is in here? Maybe we need to increase our benefits payments and they would increase their rates. Or we say, okay, can we take a break from paying you for a while to get that bank to come down to a more reasonable level? So that's our holiday where we expense less just to bring that balance down to a more reasonable level.
Thank you. Yeah, I've always been searching for a way to pay less benefits. Doesn't quite. Does anyone else have questions? Yeah.
Maybe not so much a question, but just a comment about the support staff
Yeah.
vacancies and, you know, the potential impact on student learning if we can't fill positions. That's a bit of a concern. And I know you do the numbers, you don't do the hiring, but it's a bit of a concern in terms of student achievement overall. Just a general comment I wanted to make.
That is something that we are working with Brenna. So a lot of the support staff vacancy is related to EA wages. And, you know, I'm sure you're aware of the difficulties in filling those. So something that we did last year and that we're doing again this year for our final budget is taking some of those funds and reallocating them to teaching positions that helps. It was a big exercise with the preliminary. So yeah, there will be more of that for the final. So we'll see some changes from that, but it's definitely a good thing to keep an eye on.
Well, just another comment related to that, how, you know, something maybe for superintendent, how is that working, you know?
Yeah, it's very timely because currently, right now, we have a number of teaching postings out there for inclusive support teachers from now until the end of the year and different interventionist teacher positions. And Brenna's used those funds to try to get more support in the classroom.
Perfect. Thank you.
A lot of those vacancies too would have an impact on our maintenance functions, our transportation, our administrative side. Like I know IT has felt the burden of a vacancy like that for quite some time. So it impacts our students, but it's also an impact on our staff, on our morale. People are like we're stretched thin with casuals. It's definitely a challenge.
Anybody? I'll maybe just one more. Okay. I know as we came through the COVID era, which may not be completely behind us, but I know our teacher on call it became very difficult to predict. Did you have a kind of a thought around how you prepared for, it must have been very difficult to kind of plan a budget with not knowing.
Me especially, since this was my first one in the industry and with the district. So that's probably a better question for Kevin, honestly. I wasn't too involved in it. Any thoughts on planning for TTC cost?
Yeah, well, actually just looking at it, it is about $100,000 over budget, $90,000 over budget. But it's definitely not even close to what we're experiencing
Yeah.
during COVID. So we did see some higher usage through COVID. We of course adjusted budgets to match, to make sure that we were covering those costs. And then we saw usage post-COVID kind of settle a little bit. And we are currently, we're not, I'm not gonna wood, but we're not seeing as many vacancies as we have at the worst times last year. And even though this says that we're over budget, I think through the year we'll be okay. So we'll have to look at the final to see whether we adjust it up a little bit, but we're not having any variances. It has stabilized, for sure.
Awesome. Well, on behalf of the board, thank you so much. It's been a real delight and we wish you well. And thank you for sharing your love of numbers. in a straightforward way.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you.
Jenny.
So we are looking now at committee reports and we are looking to Trustee McMahon for a report on DPAC.
Yes, well, I have to admit to fumbling it a little bit because I came to the board office when it was a online meeting.
Yeah.
So I was a little late to the party, but it seems to me that one of the challenges that they are addressing is how to find kind of the right format, right strategies to maximize participation. It continues to be, I think, a challenge for them that they're trying to address. We have the, or they have the advantage of having Associate Superintendent Sismic there, who can always update them. They're always very curious and interested in what's happening with the childcare. And CRTA President Jeff Coots, who is there to always offer some information from her perspective that I also find very helpful. There were Pro-D opportunities discussed, and they're always anxious to try and access those. And they had a few questions around the bus strike and how that might have impacted some students' transportation and attendance. So.
Thank you. But how many people do they generally have attending?
It does vary. It varies quite a bit. There are some, very, very stalwart attendees that are maybe 3 or 4, and then, there could be anywhere from 2 to 5 more people who attend if you don't count Kevin, Phil, and I.
All right. Well, thank you. Appreciate you attending on our behalf.
I enjoy it. Thank you.
Yeah. And now to Trustee Briggs, Superintendent Student Leadership Committee.
Any notes this time? In my hand. It's a really good meeting. We're at the Rob Brown Center this time, so we switched up our venue and we had some new faces and the self-declared OG members. Happy to be there all the time. We talked about the cell phone restrictions and the feedback really depending on the grades. So grade 12 were more like police themselves, and some of them said they had a few problems, but some of them didn't notice any issues. And they suggested like putting in the restrictions further down the line, so it didn't, they could ease them into it as they went down grades. So we talked about our strategic plan and just whether it resonated and reflected what issues that they saw, and we got really positive feedback every time they bring up a suggestion. They go, oh, this shit fits in right here. So yeah, it was a really, really positive meeting. Yeah, just in washrooms, especially during the.
Brought up washrooms and some of the issues that they felt they were facing there too, so. They're very open group, and very willing to share their ideas, so it's really an engaging group to be a part of.
Yeah, they get more vocal every time we meet. It's great.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate the feedback about the strategic plan, because we know that they're going to be at the forefront of this plan, so. Thank you. Now, do we have, trustee?
I can speak. So,
Perfect.
Trustee Eddie has sent me a note. Unfortunately, she had to step away from the meeting to deal with a family medical situation. And she let me know that she did send the BCPC AGM report out to trustees last week. So, so she has shared what was being voted on and what the summary of that meeting was.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. And is there any other business? And were there any questions online?
No questions online.
Do we have any questions from anyone present on agenda items from this meeting? You both did good. I think I'll get nervous. Well, I think that means